you and I have been playing a lot of board games lately.
We have.
A lot more board games I have played over in the last year than I probably have in the last few years. With the exception of the fact that when I was doing my old podcast, we would play Risk every single Sunday after the show. But, you know, your significant other is really into board games and has a lot of board games. So you have a lot of access to those things. So I thought we would talk about some of our favorite board games growing up, because I bet my list is going to be very different from yours, because mine are going to be a lot of the more like well-known, super marketable kind of games.
Like what are you talking? Like
well,
Monopoly?
Like I would say, well, no, Monopoly
because
would never,
Monopoly is terrible.
Yeah, Monopoly would never be on the list of my favorite games. Maybe like my favorite games to rage quit.
Yeah. But you and I have talked at length about Risk.
Right, and I would say Risk is definitely probably my favorite game.
And I played my first game of Risk ever with you.
Right.
And it was Doctor Who Risk.
It was Doctor Who Risk, which was a gift from a lovely young lady. But I would say Risk is my favorite game. It's definitely the board game I've played more than any other board game. I have a pretty good collection of Risk games.
You do. We are sitting in your living room right now. I can see no less than 4 different copies of
Risk. I can see 2 right now from where I'm sitting. And then if I turn my head, I can see another one. And I've got one in the kitchen too, on the shelf. If you never noticed, it's the book.
Yep.
It's the bookshelf edition.
No, I see it.
And that was the thing. I started like going through and just buying like every edition of Risk. And it wasn't until I got the Doctor Who version of Risk as a gift, it was the first like not Risk game that I have. Because that was like my distinction was like, yeah, I'm going to collect all these different editions. I want like the very first edition. I've got the Onyx edition, some collector's editions of it, and different yearly editions of it.
Yeah. And
it's nice to go through and see like how the board evolved and the game pieces and the rules. Because I have the original rules. 1959, man. I have a complete set. And but I was always like, they're like, oh, they've got Transformers Risk and they've got this Risk and that Risk. And I was like, I just want to stick with just the regular Risk, because if I go out too far, then it just gets out of hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And when I get obsessive about something,
and you want to collect every version of it,
everything.
Then the addition of like Doctor Who and Transformers Risk introduces an entire other section of.
Exactly.
Like, that's a whole hell of a lot of investment that you'd have to make in order to
so
get
that's why
every version
I tried to
of
keep
Risk.
it that. But I do like the Doctor Who Risk, except for the mechanic of the Doctor regenerating.
Yeah.
Kind of makes the game too short.
Yeah, it shortens the game. It doesn't allow you to really, play an actual game of it.
And that's why in Risk Legacy was one of the last Risk games I actually bought, because me and the guys I used to play Risk with, we all pitched in our money and played and bought Risk Legacy, and it's an evolving board game. And it was kind of the first one of that Legacy series. I guess they've put out some other ones since then.
There's several of those now.
And that ruined Risk for us. It really did. Like, we didn't play Risk. I think we may have played Risk one more time, just classic Risk, after we went through the whole, like, what is it, 17, 18 game run
18
of
games.
Risk Legacy. I mean, you want to talk about, like, I'm threatened to kick my roommate out of the apartment over some shit from that game. It was bad. It was just bad.
Maybe steer clear of Legacy
and you
games,
get cutthroat, and at certain points it's just like, this isn't fair to anybody but this person who's won all these previous games.
Yeah.
And it just makes you like really resent everybody. So what are some of your favorite board games, Chris?
Well, see, and my whole thing is that I never really played a whole hell of a lot of board games when I was a kid.
Right.
Like, I maybe played a couple of games of chess. I never played Risk.
Oh, I like chess.
I never played Clue.
Clue's great.
I played my first game of Clue like last year, and I played my first game of Risk last year.
Oh wow!
First ever of either of those games. I probably played like Sorry and Uno and shit like that growing up, and I know that I played at least 1 or 2 full games of Monopoly and hated every second of it.
Oh yeah, it's terrible.
But I love trivia games.
Me too. And
you
know what?
Trivia games.
There's one board game that I have played as much as Risk, it would be Trivial Pursuit. And that was kind of a thing, like when our families got together, like if we went over to my aunt's house, so it'd be like me and my aunt and my sister and myself and my mom and my dad and uncles and my grandmother, we would all play Trivial Pursuit. We'd be on teams, and that was like a thing that we did a lot. There was also another game, and I would love to find it. I don't think it's in print anymore, but it's called Encore. And I think you and I and some other karaoke going friends of ours would really like this game because the way it is like you have a category, and it's like rain, and you have to sing 7 words of a song with the word rain in it. And you just go back and forth while this timer goes, and then it's the other person's turn, and it's all about singing songs that you know.
Right.
And it's not about like songs that are on the card, sing this song.
Right.
It's like sing a song that has to do with, you know, love, or sing a song about a bicycle.
Yeah.
And that's like my grandmother would know all these cool old songs, you know? And she would sing all these cool old songs.
Now I have straight up Bicycle Race from Queen
Well,
stuck in my head.
she sang the song because I remember the chorus part was like, and you'll look neat upon the seat of a bicycle built for two.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, I'd never heard that
song
song until my grandmother sang it to me. And it's a lot of good memories. So keep your eye out for that game, Chris. If you guys ever find a copy, pick it up, because I think it would be definitely a fun like party game.
Oh yeah.
You know, and then, you know, we played a lot of Pictionary. And
did you ever play Scattergories?
No, never played Scattergories.
I played Scattergories a lot with my family growing up.
Yeah.
And that's a really fun game, like, because it you know, it forces you to try to think up words, because you know, you roll a letter and you write down as many of these with that letter, and if you can like do 2 words that are, you know, related but both start with that same letter, like you get double points for it and stuff like that game was always a lot of fun because it challenged you mentally and it challenged your family mentally.
Right. I think it's going to be, I think the whole industry of board games is so different today than it was back in the day. And I think with the advent of like video games and like online multiplayer and stuff like that, board games aren't as popular now as they used to be.
But at the same time, they're ever growing in popularity.
True.
There are more new, really cool board games being made now
but
than
how
at
many
any other time in history.
I know, and a lot of them are like crowdfunded and everything, and marketed to a specific group of people. But here's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
You know, when are we going to have another board game that comes out? Or will we ever have another board game that comes out that reaches like Monopoly level popularity? Or Clue, or Risk, or, you know, like some of these like Battleship.
Right.
You know, some of these games that have stood the test of time and are just like a thing that we all play that now. You know, and it's weird to think of some of the games that have come out lately that I think are popular. Cards Against Humanity, Apples to Apples.
Yeah.
Those games were pretty big, but other than those, I can't really think of a whole lot that have really kind of... Settlers, maybe. Settlers Catan, because I know a lot of people that play that game, but they're all like super niche people. It's not like... You know, the whole family's going to sit around and play Settlers. I mean, I'm sure there are families that do that.
I was about to say, because my family did that for a long time.
But, you know, are there like... I don't know. And I think that's why like trivia games are some of my most favorite. Like we played the rock and roll or the music trivia game. Yeah. And I really enjoyed that. And I think you guys did too.
Yeah, I definitely did.
But, you know, your girlfriend, she doesn't like trivia games. She likes board games where she thinks. And I've been introduced to a lot of cool games from her. Like
she's got so many really
Villages.
Cool games.
I liked that. Munchkin. I really liked that. I played my second game of Settlers ever was the one that she had.
Yeah, the ancient Egypt version.
Right. The DC deck builder card game. You know, that one. We played that Alien Frontiers game for the first time. And so that's really cool. And that I know somebody who's really into board games and who
can be
encourages us to play. And so now I'm kind of like looking at board games online and seeing stuff like that XCOM board game looks really cool, and I want to try that out. There's a Witcher board game, there's a Doom board game. So like all these video game properties that I love, there's also board game versions of them. My main apprehension to buying a lot of those things is, what if we all get together, play it once, and no one ever wants to play it with me again? Yeah. Or I can't get anyone to play with me. Yeah. You know, that's, you know, the...
Well, because you were talking about how the advent of, you know, television and video games had kind of risen up and taken the place of board game nights and stuff.
Yeah.
Because, like in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, before, cable came around in the early 80s, that's what people would do. They would probably, watch the CBS Evening News and play Monopoly or some shit. I mean...
And you would do that a lot as kids. Like, my sister and I would play board games just, during the summer when we were home alone. And I know a lot of kids did that back in the day, but now with tablets and all that kind of stuff, are they doing that as much? I don't know.
I would say almost certainly not. Over the Christmas holiday, we got together at my aunt's house over in Wichita, and they, it was like pulling teeth trying to get everybody together to play a game.
What'd you end up playing?
We played Catchphrase, actually, which is really fun. It's a really fun game.
And did you all end up having a good time? Be like, hey, I'm glad we did this? Or were they all just super bitchy the whole time?
And that was the thing. There was a disagreement about rules. And that's how it always is. It's a disagreement about rules that kind of pisses off one or two players. Somebody ends up walking away from the table. And that's exactly what happened. But... we figured out where my aunt was getting something mixed up in the rules.
Okay.
And convinced my cousin to come back to the table and play the rest of the game with us.
Oh, wow.
We got it eventually, but it took us a solid 2 hours to get through a game of Catchphrase.
Dude, emotions can run high.
They do.
In board games, because it can get, competitive and all that. So I kind of like the idea of these team-based games where it's basically the group against the game.
Yeah.
And so there's no winner.
Cooperative games.
Right.
Big fan of cooperative games.
And that's going to bring us to our next